But I was really setting the talk in the context of the threefold path of ethics, meditation and wisdom, and talking about how, although I've always loved meditation, and even then it took a while to establish, and I still don't necessarily meditate if I miss my morning routine. And but what I was just coming on to describe is that we shouldn't underestimate meditation and what it takes to establish a daily practice of it, because it's like, and I was using the analogy of an ocean liner. It's like this human being has got a huge amount of momentum to it. We have so much conditioned momentum to do the things we've always done and go on doing the things we've always done, and often that might be about being busy or being this or being that, and and meditation interrupts that, so it's a lot to interrupt, and so not to underestimate what it takes to establish meditation, but also, looking at, what I was putting in place, at least in those first few years to establish it, that we can set up the conditions for meditation. So, for example, the conditions I had then was that I went to a weekly class at the Buddhist centre. And that would reinvigorate it. I'd be with other people who meditate. It normalised meditation. It re-inspired me. And also I would go on retreat. I mean, in fact, I was starting to meditate before I had children, so it was easier. I was going on retreat probably 3 or 4 times a year. So when I got uninspired, I would go on a retreat, and that would reinvigorate me. But also having a routine, like having a particular routine. For me, it's easier in the morning, but learning what works. So we can have all of these sort of conditions to set up why we meditate. But as I'll come back to, I think the bottom line with meditation is just do it. And that becomes easier when we have experience and confidence of the effect of meditation, and we have more understanding of why it's important. But that really is the bottom line, is that, whatever our mind is saying about how important other things are to do in this particular 20 minutes or however long it is, just do it. And but people meditate, or at least start meditating, for different reasons. We've run a lot of courses here, and meditation courses. And a lot of people will come to meditation because they want a calmer mind. Maybe they're being completely driven mad by or overwhelmed by thoughts and having lots of thoughts in their mind. But other people will come to meditation because of the Buddhist path or another path, a sort of inspiration towards enlightenment, towards freedom, towards spiritual development, however that is expressed in them. Similarly, people can come in because they want to get away from or an experience of pain or difficulty, or they can come because they want to move towards greater sense of freedom, well-being, pleasure. Maybe they've had pleasant experiences with it. So there's lots of different ways in. My experience of running courses with meditation is that overwhelmingly people come in seeking calm and wanting to move away from difficult or painful experiences. But it's there's obviously, as I say, there's quite a range of different reasons, and those reasons also link with the fit of meditation to both ethics and wisdom within this context of the threefold path. And you could sort of broadly see that in terms of the fit with the ethics or lifestyle, that might be more around the motivation for a calmer mind and experience, and a sort of more or less painful experience of life. And with the wisdom aspect, it might be fitting better with people drawn more to the sort of spiritual development towards enlightenment. But that's a very broad way of looking at it. So I'm going to talk a bit about the fit first of meditation and ethics. We've got ethics, meditation, wisdom, the threefold path. And in the threefold path, the aspect of ethics, or broadly lifestyle, how we are in the world, you can see the ethics aspect quite broadly, comes first. And the reason for that is that because if you try and sit in meditation and things in your life feel very chaotic or difficult or overwhelming, it's much harder. So if your lifestyle isn't conducive to meditation, it can be harder to settle and feel the benefits of meditation. But also, once you're actually sort of sitting on a meditation cushion, just say you have managed to get yourself there, if there's things that you've done or said, maybe recently or maybe in the past, that are maybe you don't feel very good about, or if you have quite strong reactions to things that other people have said or done to you, where it's just like, yeah, but they did that. Again, that's all going to sort of, in a way, come up and bite you in the bum during meditation, so to speak. So it's, so that's the link really between the sort of the fit between the ethics and the meditation, that we sort of need to address that aspect of how we react and the ethical aspect in order to be able to feel the fruits of meditation. But it's very important to see it in terms of, it's not just about how we behave in the world, or that if you've done something that you may not feel proud about or not feel good about, or that feels maybe unskillful in some way. It's also about how we react or respond to things that other people have done to us. So meditation will show up the things that we maybe want to address outside of meditation, but both in terms of, but it also gives us tools to work with those things actually during the meditation itself. So one way I quite like about, one image I quite like with this is it's a meditation is like taking the drama of our lives into the open air, into giving it a bit more space around it, a bit more perspective around it. But also quite specifically for those of you who've done, for example, the Metta Bhavana meditation, where we have various different stages where we're bringing to mind different people, including in the fourth stage of it, somebody that we find difficult, or that maybe has done something or said something that we find difficult. That gives a really specific way of working with that, of working with our reactions to what other people have said or done to us. So in that way, the area of ethics or lifestyle very much supports the meditation, but at the same time, meditation can support how we are in the world and how we react to it. How do we react to things in the world? So one of the classic things that people can find, and I certainly found, is that when you start off meditating, you're starting off trying to fit meditation into your life. Maybe you have a really busy life, or you have to get out early for work or whatever. So it's like, how can I fit meditation in? How can I open the space to meditate? But then once meditation really starts to bite and you have a sort of more regular meditation practice, you can get to the stage where actually you start needing to change your life to fit in, so that to fit with meditation. So quite, it isn't uncommon for people who get really involved in meditation to start making quite big changes in their lives, so that they can open more space for meditation and in response to what comes up in meditation. So there's a couple of other things I wanted to say about this fit of meditation with ethics that are slightly more subtle, because obviously that that you've got that loop, haven't you? That whatever you're doing in your life fits into will affect the meditation. Your meditation will affect how you are in the world. But also on a more subtle level, what you've probably noticed about your mind or the human mind is that thoughts arise in it. And that is just something that happens. It's the job of the mind to think. Thoughts arise. And when we meditate, we can learn to watch the thoughts that arise and pass. So there are lots of techniques you can use to sort of maybe imagine them as clouds, or imagine them as a train going by, or I often find it more effective, really, rather than trying to let the thoughts go, just to come back to the body, come back to the breath, and then the attention moves away from the thoughts. And we can also learn with thoughts that some thoughts that arise in the mind, whether during meditation or everything that happens during meditation happens outside of meditation as well. It's just that we can be more aware of it when we're meditating. But some thoughts, we'll notice, have quite an emotional pull or content to them. And then we can learn to, in meditation, to practice with those thoughts in a way that is more about turning towards them, and more acceptance, more kindness, more warmth. We can learn sort of not to just chuck more wood on the fire. If there's something with some heat that arises in meditation, it might be that in daily life, or if you're in conversation with somebody, they might be saying, yeah, and they did this, and they did that, and you're just chucking more sort of wood on the fire. But in meditation, you can, learn to just not do that. Come back to the body, come back to the breath, turn with awareness, turn with kindness to the thoughts. And that's really important. It's really important. That's one of the things we can learn in meditation that's really relevant in daily life. One of the sort of obviously fundamental teachings of Buddhism is that actions have consequences. The way that we behave will have consequences. But a thought just arising in the mind doesn't necessarily. Thoughts arise independent on past stuff that's happened. So you might have quite a shocking thought that arises in your mind, but it just arises. Maybe that it's a film you've seen, it's a message that was given you at school or by your parents. Something like that just arises in the mind. But if we can learn in meditation to notice that, to work with it skillfully, basically just not to take much notice and allow it to self-liberate, there is no consequence. It's just something that happens. I think sometimes I hear people getting really worried about the thoughts that are arising in their mind, but it's only the moment at which you grab hold of it, throw wood on the fire, it builds into a whole state, it makes you feel this way about a certain person, maybe, results in you speaking in a way that's harsh, or, cutting somebody off, or, that's when it has a consequence. A simple arising of the thought and self-liberation of the thought doesn't. So that's where, one of the ways in which we can sort of learn to notice and release thoughts. And so that sense of just noticing that and doing that in meditation can also just give us a sense of our own ground, our own sort of core strength, and we can just notice that, so that we're less thrown by other people saying, yeah, you shouldn't put up with that, or that's going to happen, or that's going to, and you can just sort of relax. Okay, that thought's arising, let it go. So that's really important in terms of the fit with of meditation with ethics. And also meditation can give us space to see what's actually going on. So we're less likely to be sort of blindsided. We're less likely to be caught unawares by something just coming up and a huge reaction and like what's and just not knowing why, So, when I was leading the meditation earlier and looking at, you get these sort of feeling tones in the body. They might be pleasant, unpleasant, and then thoughts in the mind. And typically, you know, when that you know, you've got a feeling tone, so you might have a feeling tone going on, and then a thought. I mean, our thoughts are often trying to be helpful, or I think they're probably always trying to be helpful. So it might be that you've got a constricted feeling in the chest or belly, and the thoughts are sort of helpfully trying to explain why that might be. You know, so it's like, yeah, that's probably because so-and-so did that, or this happened, or it's because of anticipating this. And at that moment, you've got this hooking together of a feeling going on and a thought, and that creates an emotional state, you know, the sense of becoming. You know, when you talk about, you know, we're constantly, you know, then we're becoming angry, and then you keep doing that, you become an angry person. You know, there is this sort of building, but when we sort of strip that back to bare experience in meditation, we can really notice that happening, notice this hooking, you know. And it may be that you know, constricted or unpleasant or strong sensation in the tummy might be that, you know, something you ate, or coffee, or all sorts of things. You know, it may be nothing to do with anything else. So it's really helpful to just strip that back to notice what's going on, and increasingly learn what it is to be this particular human being, you know, with all our past conditioning and things that have happened. And in a way to experience sometimes quite strong reactions and experiences in what can be a safe space. It may not be for everybody, it does depend on what's going on, but for a lot of people, a lot of the time, just sitting in meditation will be a relatively safe place to allow things just to arise and notice them. You know, like, so you can sit with really quite strong things. You know, I've sat, for example, with rage, you know, proper rage, you know, just, and it's like, wow. And then, but actually just, and in fact, I quite like, in fact, Vasantra uses, who's one of the teachers in Triratna, would use this, you know, that actually you can have something quite strong arising, and it can be quite, I find it quite helpful sometimes just to think, ouch. You know, like if it's painful, you can just literally think, ouch, and just allow that to, oh wow, that's a painful thing. Or even like, wow, which is a curiosity, you know, sometimes, wow, you know, I'm really worked up about that, or wow, that's strong. You know, those are both, they can sort of diffuse things a bit, you know, you're just taking it back to that bare experience of, ouch, wow. You know, and I've had that experience in meditation where, as I say, it could be fury that's happening, or really like, you know, when you have the same thought over and over again, you know, or recounting something, and then they did this, and then they did, and then, but actually with that sense of just sitting back and thinking, wow, I'm really worked up about that, or wow, that's very strong. You know, sometimes I can find that, you know, a couple of minutes later I'm just wondering what to have for lunch, you know, and it's amazing how it can just sort of dissipate it, taking it back. So meditation does really, you know, in terms of the fit with ethics, it opens up that space where we can just be curious, you know, quite gentle, you know, find a sort of a sense of reality, of ground, of our own ground, connect with ourselves, connect with what's going on, in a way that's a bit diffused from the sort of, you know, how we might often feel. And it may even be that when we then watch what's happening, can even feel quite funny, you know, it can be like a bit ridiculous. It's like, wow. You know, but always with a sense of, you know, in what we're sitting with in meditation is this human being with all of its conditioning. But actually what we're experiencing will have a universality to it. You know, this is what can happen in the universal human experience. You know, it's very unlikely that thought that's arisen in our mind that is so shocking has never arisen in any other human mind. Maybe it happens all the time. You know, particularly those very common thoughts, you know, what do people think about us? Oh, this or that, you know, the sort of anxiety-related, fear-related thoughts that arise. You know, it's so that opens up the opportunity to see it in a bigger context. You know, wow, being a human being is so, it's curious, it's strange. And that's where we can move into, in a way, the fit with the sort of wisdom or insight aspect, which is also, this threefold path: ethics, meditation, wisdom. So I'm going to move now into talking about the fit between meditation and the wisdom insight aspect. And what we mean by that, what I mean by it in this context, is with the wisdom, it's like when we clearly see the nature of reality as taught by Buddhism, and not exclusively by Buddhism, but we clearly see it in ways that actually affect how we respond, or actually affect our reactions. So Buddhism teaches us that everything is a flow of changing stuff that arises. So whatever arises in dependence on certain conditions, and when those conditions cease, that thing also ceases. So it may be that, thoughts or emotions arise in dependence on ways that we were brought up, or what's happened, or what we had for breakfast, or whether we're tired, and when those conditions change, those things change. And obviously this is a huge topic that I'm not going to go into in depth, but also that whatever arises, can self-liberate, can just disappear, that things don't have this enduring, solid, permanent, unchanging self, including us. And we can learn that, and we can study it, and we can read about it in Buddhism and in other places and think, yeah, beautiful, or yeah, weird, or whatever we think. And we may, really understand it intellectually, but the way we behave when things happen is not according to that. It's as if this is going to last forever, or as if, so that's how we know the depth with which we are seeing this reality, is by our reactions. So one of the things, for example, is that from the perspective of Buddhism, from an insight perspective, one of the ways, in fact, Bhante, Sangharakshita put this as, what we perceive is our perceptions, what we experience is our experience. So whatever we're experiencing in life is made up, is about how we're responding to something that's happening. It's not an absolute. For example, quite a nice example of this is often around the weather. So a couple of weeks ago, I was on the team leading a walking retreat. So you're outside camping, walking all day. And for the first couple of days particularly, it rained torrentially during that. But it's not a sort of given that it's raining, that's bad. It doesn't have to be. There's what everybody is experiencing is their experience. So some people might be experiencing it's raining, it's ruined, things are shit, this is horrid. But other people will be experiencing something completely different. So whatever we experience in life in any given moment is not just about, oh, well, this is happening, that's bad, or this is happening, that's good. It's about how we respond to that. And again, we can sort of, so we can start to see that more clearly. It's something that we can get glimpses of, that reality of this flow, this changing flow, or the fact that, what we're experiencing is our own narrative, that we're adding things together and creating a picture of what's happening. We can get glimpses of that without meditating, and people who have never meditated will see quite clearly that changing, ephemeral flow of things that is reality. You can see that very clearly without meditation. But in terms of the fit between meditation and wisdom and the threefold path, meditation is one of the conditions that we can have to set up the likelihood of that wisdom arising, that insight arising. And generally, in terms of meditation, it would be a sort of a just sitting, like that fourth bit of the meditation that we did before the break. that would be one of the conditions to help the arising of insight. But also we might reflect, you can do reflection or inquiry, so reflection might be reflecting on different teachings, but also inquiry into direct experience, just looking at what's happening in our body, sort of sitting back and in a way watching the show, watching, whatever's arising, the thoughts, the feelings, and watching them self-liberate, being aware of the fact that they're not solid, enduring, that you can feel a rage 1 minute and then wonder what's for lunch the next minute. You can just watch the impermanent, insubstantial nature of it. And also in meditation, from this sort of link with the wisdom aspect, we can even try and inquire into or look for something we know isn't there. So Buddhism teaches us, for example, that there is no fixed, enduring self-being. This is all just a flow of conditions arising. We can actually look for, well, so where is that? Where is my sense of who I am? Where is my sense of self? How solid does it feel? Is it in my head? Is it in my heart? Is it my belly? Is it somewhere else? What is it? So it's that process of inquiring into that can be one of the conditions for that insight to arise. And also just having the confidence that it's not out there. Everything we can investigate the nature of experience here in our own bodies, in our own experience. So one final thing I want to say about, in terms of meditation, which is a bit of a hobby horse of mine at the moment, is to, and this relates to all types of meditation and both the ethics and wisdom aspects, but it's to allow the possibility of enjoyment in meditation, of actually enjoying it. And sometimes I think one of the barriers to enjoying meditation can be thinking that we can't. It might be that, I've got to meditate for years and overcome all of the hindrances and the blocks and the distractions and never have any thoughts and have to have a clear mind, before I can actually just relax into enjoying it, or before, feelings, natural feelings of bliss or well-being can arise. Or there may even be a belief that, I shouldn't be sitting here feeling pleasure or bliss or any of the things that can naturally arise in meditation, because of all the problems in the world or problems that my friends are facing, or there's this going on or that going on. So I think it's important to allow that possibility and notice if those thoughts are barriers, and particularly being aware that the sorts of positive feeling tone that can arise in meditation is, so sometimes when pleasant things arise, it's very much because something tastes nice or it sounds nice or it feels nice. But in meditation, you can have that sense of arising of pleasant sensations or bliss, where it's not about the world of the senses. It has within it a sense of a taste of freedom or liberation. There's something that feels expansive or letting go or free, or that you will undoubtedly have felt those things at some time and can recognize that. So I think it's important just to recognize that feeling, that state is inherently positive. It's an inherently positive thing to inhabit, and also it's good to. I think the other thing I wanted to say, this sort of final bit of the talk as well, is that it's important with meditation to learn to trust our experience and work with it. We give a lot of instructions with meditation, but it's very hard to do that in any universal way because people will have different things it's landing in. So so there is that sense of learning of experimenting and learning to trust what's going on. So for example, in that meditation before the break, I was talking about, if there's something in your experience that feels positive, even if very subtly or very small. You know, you could imagine it as the embers of a fire, and you're paying attention to it and gently blowing on it, allowing it to grow or to ignite. You know, so there isn't something, you're not grasping at it and thinking, oh, yeah, I want that. But nor are you being too passive and just waiting for these things to arise. So there is that sense of we're actively working in meditation in those ways, but we're also doing nothing. You know, so for example, with that sort of blowing on the embers of the fire, you know, sometimes when I sit in meditation, even just that sensation just above the top lip is on a very subtle level, is pleasant, you know, so I can just allow my attention to come back to that, to focus on that. It's not really focused like that, but just in a gentle, relaxed way, and then that can grow. For example, that's just one example. But then, you know, if I'm then get distracted by thoughts, which will happen, just coming straight back to that. Distracted, coming straight back. And I think, you know, just this thing of trusting ourselves in meditation, and over time, sometimes what can happen if we're meditating, even for years, is that people find they can sometimes plateau. So meditation can become a bit dry, a bit dull, or you're not feeling like you're progressing in any way. You know, and then it might be time to think, okay, so what do I want to do differently? Maybe talk to somebody about it, or look at what am I doing, you know, the ethics, lifestyle aspect, what am I doing in my life? What am I doing just before I sit to meditate? You know, do I want to try doing something differently? You know, maybe just sitting, maybe exploring pleasant sensation, maybe, you know, there's different things to try. So, but it is very common, and it's certainly been my experience over the last 30 years, to have periods where meditation is more accessible or feels more fruitful, or for periods of time than it does at others. But yeah, just finally, to emphasize, this aspect with meditation, just do it. You know, it works. And one of the things that I really would advise is that if you can't make yourself sit on a cushion or whatever to meditate, lie on the floor. That's what I find very accessible sometimes. It's just like, okay, I can't make myself meditate, I don't want to meditate, but I can just lie down, you know, whether it's with, you know, feet up on the sofa, or better still, you know, I tend to have a yoga mat at home. And there's something about lying down, particularly in a sort of semi-supine position with knees up, that is different from lying on a sofa or lying on a bed. You know, it turns attention inwards, and you start thinking, okay, what's going on in the body, noticing, and you can move towards meditation, and then that maybe even breaks that ocean liner of momentum, and you can then actually sit and meditate. So that's one thing I would advise. And then the second, just to say to allow this possibility of enjoyment. And actually being relaxed is inherently enjoyable. It's taken me quite a lot of decades to notice that, because it's not been my natural ocean liner momentum. So that's what I wanted to say about linking meditation within the threefold path, both to this sort of ethical, calming lifestyle aspect, and also the fit with that opening the possibility of insight, of wisdom aspect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll swap mics and then you can take questions.
Yeah, so there's we've got 13 minutes if anybody has any questions at all.
I have one if no one else does.
Yes, please.
Oh. Hi, Karunagita.
Well, I'm talking to this one now.
Oh.
It's all right. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. Great, really great talk. Thank you so much. And I was just thinking about this kind of meditation ethics. You know, where you were talking about how your outside life influences your kind of meditation practice. And I wondered if you were someone who was new to Buddhist ideas, what would be your suggestion to them if they wanted to kind of apply some of these ethics to their life? What would be the first thing you might suggest that would help them to kind of have a better meditation practice?
Thanks. I mean, I think one of the things in terms of, you know, when we're particularly focused on meditation, I think it's an opportunity to allow ourselves to experience consequences. So, for example, if something comes to mind where, you know, like one of the things I've had to work with is around being irritable. That's a sort of, you know, yeah. I mean, so if I might have said something that's a bit snappy to somebody who's a bit vulnerable or whatever, that might sort of come up in my meditation. And I think the first thing to do is just not to try and move away from it too quickly, so you can actually feel the sort of consequences and just see what arises. Open up that space, like that, taking the drama into open air and turning towards it, being accepting rather than thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that, you know, boom, put it down. Because that's what we tend to do, isn't it? Avoid things or beat ourselves up. So it's a chance to just be with that in a more open, warm space and just feel the consequences. And then I think what can often happen is that something just arises naturally that we might want to do. You know, so you may or may not want to say anything about it. It's not necessarily always appropriate. So you can just see what arises. But yeah, I think meditation is an opportunity to feel things in a warmer, more open way.
Questions, yeah? Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Hi. How important is it to have a teacher or to have someone to guide you at the maybe particularly at the beginning of when you're learning to meditate?
When you're, I mean, I think that's it's an interesting question, and I think it does depend who you are. But I think particularly when you're learning to meditate, I'm not sure it's that important. You know, I think there's you know there's a lot of quite good resources and led meditations online, but I think as soon as you start getting engaged in it at all, you know, or you do it for a while, then I think it's incredibly helpful. You know, I think it's just very supportive, you know, whether it's a teacher or, you know, other people that you can talk to. But also, there are sort of rabbit holes you can go down, you know, I think you can probably tell, you know, again, I think this thing of trust your experience is really helpful. So if you find that you're meditating and there is a sense of, you know, moving towards greater freedom, greater release, or there's a sense of calming, you can sort of trust that you're going in the right direction, you know. But if you feel like you're getting stuck or lost in stuff or having quite big experiences that are a bit unnerving, I think then it's particularly important. But also then I think if you're wanting to keep going with it and explore a Buddhist path, then I think it's also really helpful. But it doesn't, you know, I think with Triratna, which is here, we're unlike some Buddhist traditions, we tend not to have that sort of a teacher approach. You know, there are lots of people who teach, and so I think it doesn't necessarily need to be. Well, I've never had a particular teacher I've had over time, particular people that I found helpful and might have met up with on a, you know, every few weeks or every few months, and would use as a sounding board. But that's been not always been the same person. Does that help?
We've got a question online from David.
Sorry, there's just one more in the room and then we'll come to...
Oh, we can't hear you anymore.
Just, I think there's one more question from me, actually.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Sorry, David, they're just going to have a studio question, then we'll come back to your Shrineman question.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thanks a lot. People. Situations of sometimes it's
Pauline, don't worry, I'll get them to... Karunagita, the microphone completely cut out there. So could you repeat that question for us online?
Yeah, the question is basically, does it get any easier? And the answer... Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Karunagita. We just couldn't hear the speaker, the other person. Although we can't now because
Yes,
coming through.
I think it might just accidentally press the button. I think that's probably what happened. It should be like that.
Yes, it does get easier. I mean, meditation is like any skill. We develop the skill by doing it, you know, I mean, one of the analogies used, particularly in the mindfulness world, is, you know, if you want to build a muscle, you need to do lots of repetitions with that muscle. And meditation is exactly the same in terms of skills, you know, although it will fluctuate. And what we do outside of meditation is also really important. And what we do just before meditation is also really important. But we do build those skills. And also, you know, you build those skills as in not taking things too seriously, but also with the arising of insight and seeing more clearly. That is also incredibly helpful because you can learn from experience not to take things too seriously. You know, it's just like, yeah, and even just seeing, yes, so yes, definitely, it becomes easier. Yep. Jenny.
Right, David, do you want to...
Yeah, okay. This is a quick question on plateauing. I've been meditating for 12 years, and earlier this year, I hit a massive plateau when everything stopped being blissful and joyous. And I've found now that by my core practice is breath awareness. And I've found that by varying technique, the Goenka alternating body scans and nostril tip awareness and several other breathing methods has really freshened up my meditation. So I wonder what your view was on varying technique.
Yeah, no, that sounds perfect and really sensible to do. I think, you know, I think one of the dangers is if people plateau and then it stops feeling, you know, and then think, oh, I've just got to try harder, or I've got to do the same thing harder, or the same thing more. And actually, it's probably just that what you need has shifted, you know, which can happen, you know, with different levels of awareness. I mean, for example, I think a lot of people would find that over the years, as they meditate, they might move towards spending more time just sitting, you know, with whatever's arising, you know, where there is some stability to start with, you know, maybe more than having, you know, the mindfulness of breathing or the metabhavana, where there are particular stages. But that's just you know, one way of evolving it. As you say, you've found other ways to engage with the breath, to focus on the breath, and that's been really helpful. So I think that's the thing, is to experiment and trust, you know. So it's, but I think it's again, it's one of these balances that isn't an absolute instruction, because you don't want to be sort of trying something for a few times and then it doesn't work, so you just throw it away straight away. And yet, nor do you want to just keep flogging something that's, you know, flogging a dead horse or whatever. If something's not working, then it is good to think, okay, you know, something to change, and then you can experiment. And that is also where having people to talk to suggest different things can also be good. But it sounds like for you that's worked, you know, really, really well. Thank you. It's past, yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to need to close it there. But thank you all. Really, really good to spend the morning with you, and hopefully see you again.
Thank